How financial memory outlives every crisis. Crises fade faster than the lessons they leave behind. Headlines disappear, markets recover, but memory remains. This matters today because financial systems do not reset after shock. They remember, not emotionally, but structurally. Every crisis leaves traces embedded in behavior, regulation, incentives, and instinct. Long after volatility subsides, the system continues responding to events that no longer exist. The past does not simply inform the present in finance. It inhabits it, shaping decisions through mechanisms so deeply embedded that participants often cannot distinguish between learned caution and current reality. To understand this, we have to stop thinking of memory as history. In finance, memory is operational. It lives in models calibrated to past failures, in policies shaped by previous mistakes, in habits formed under stress. Memory quietly guides decision-making long after the danger has passed. London has accumulated more of this memory than almost any other financial center. The city has lived through crashes, panics, bubbles, and collapses across centuries. Each episode rewired behavior. Risk tolerance shifted. Trust was redefined. New safeguards emerged, not as reactions, but as permanent features. The cumulative weight of these experiences gives London a depth of institutional memory that newer financial centers cannot replicate, and that memory shapes every decision the city makes, whether participants recognize it or not. At first, these memories were explicit. Rules were written, limits imposed, warnings repeated. But over time, memory sank deeper. It became instinct. Traders learned when to pull back without being told. Institutions learn where danger hides without needing reminders. This is how memory survives crisis, not as fear, but as reflex. And once reflex replaces reflection, the system begins reacting to the past as much as the present, which raises a dangerous question. What happens when memory no longer matches reality? Because systems that remember too much can become prisoners of what they once survived. Financial memory embeds itself quietly, shaping behavior without asking permission. After every crisis, markets promise change. But what truly changes is not intention, it is instinct. Institutions carry forward the emotional imprint of loss. Risk committees grow cautious. Models weight recent pain more heavily. Decision-makers remember how quickly confidence disappeared and how costly hesitation became. London has seen this transformation repeatedly. After turbulence, behavior tightens. Capital becomes selective. Innovation slows. Participants protect themselves from yesterday's threat. Even as today's conditions evolve, memory becomes a lens through which every new signal is interpreted. Data that confirms a remembered danger is amplified. Data that contradicts it is discounted. The system develops a bias toward caution that feels rational but is actually archaeological, rooted in conditions that may no longer apply. This creates invisible drag. Opportunities are judged more harshly. Growth is questioned more aggressively. Uncertainty feels heavier than it objectively is. The system adapts to avoid repeating its last mistake, sometimes at the expense of recognizing new possibilities. Safeguards multiply. Processes harden. Flexibility is sacrificed for reassurance. Memory becomes embedded not just in policy, but in culture. This affects alignment. When enough participants share the same memory, behavior converges. Markets move conservatively in unison. Risk appetite contracts across institutions. Confidence returns slowly, even when fundamentals improve. The past continues influencing the present long after it's relevant. But memory does not discriminate. It protects against dangers that no longer exist, while leaving systems exposed to those that do. The threats that caused the last crisis are unlikely to cause the next one. Yet memory anchors behavior to familiar fears. London understands this tension deeply. Memory is essential for survival, but unchecked, it can limit adaptation. And the longer memory dominates decision-making, the more difficult it becomes to recognize when the world has changed. Because systems that live in the past struggle to see the future forming in front of them, the conflict emerges when memory begins overriding evidence. As conditions improve, data shifts, and opportunities reappear, behavior remains anchored to past fear. Markets hesitate even when risk has changed. Institutions delay action not because danger is present, but because danger is remembered. The system protects itself from yesterday instead of preparing for tomorrow. London encounters this friction constantly. After major shocks, caution becomes reflex. Even contradictory signals struggle to break through. Positive data is discounted. Recovery is treated as temporary. Participants wait for confirmation that never feels sufficient. Memory filters perception so thoroughly that reality arrives distorted. The system develops a form of institutional skepticism that protects against false optimism, but also prevents genuine recovery from being recognized until long after it has begun. This creates a subtle but powerful imbalance. Those willing to move beyond memory gain advantage. Those bound to preserve safety, but miss transition. The system begins splitting between adaptation and preservation. One group slowly tests new ground. Another remains defensive. Tension grows as outcomes diverge. Success returns unevenly, reinforcing belief that caution was justified, even when it was costly. This is the trap of financial memory. It keeps systems safe long enough to forget why it was needed, and then it keeps them cautious long after it is useful. London understands that memory must be challenged deliberately. Institutions run stress scenarios not only for collapse, but for recovery. They ask uncomfortable questions. What if the fear no longer applies? What if the constraint is now the risk? But challenging memory feels dangerous. It requires unlearning survival habits. It invites exposure before comfort returns. Not everyone is willing to take that step. And as long as memory dominates behavior, the system remains anchored to what has already survived, rather than what could still become. The climax arrives when memory finally loosens its grip, not because the past is forgotten, but because it is recontextualized. At a certain point, evidence outweighs reflex. New patterns persist. Signals align consistently in a direction memory did not predict. Slowly, behavior adjusts. Not abruptly, but cautiously. Institutions extend trust again. Capital re-enters selectively. Confidence rebuilds, not because fear vanished, but because reality demanded change. London understands this moment well. The city does not erase memory. It integrates it. Lessons remain embedded, but they stop dictating every decision. Safeguards stay in place, but they no longer dominate strategy. Memory becomes reference rather than rule. The system regains flexibility without losing discipline. This is the resolution of financial memory. Crises no longer define behavior. They inform it. Markets begin responding to present conditions rather than past trauma. Opportunity reappears where hesitation once lived. Risk is taken deliberately, not reflexively. The system moves forward carrying its history, not trapped by it. The lesson is enduring. Memory is essential for survival, but progress requires release. Systems that cannot loosen their grip on the past remain safe, but stagnant. Those that learn when to let go regain adaptability, without repeating old mistakes. London's strength lies in this balance, remembering enough to endure, forgetting enough to evolve, and knowing precisely when the difference matters. Subscribe to join the journey.